Sometimes, fate places us in situations that defy everything we believe to be right. Life seems to follow a logical course until suddenly a single moment changes everything, blurring the boundaries between the permitted and the forbidden. How far are we willing to go for a feeling that consumes us, even when we know that the consequences may be irreversible? This is the story of an uncontrollable passion, of secrets hidden behind furtive glances, and of a love that, although we tried to deny it, became our greatest truth. Welcome to your favorite channel, Pride Chronicles. We invite you to subscribe, as we have noticed that more than 90% are not subscribed to the channel, and give us a like to the video. Let's get started. When I met Eduardo, I never imagined that my life would take such an unexpected turn. He was my wife's father, an imposing man with a strong presence and a deep gaze. I had always felt respect for him, but as time went by, that admiration turned into something more. At first, I ignored him. I told myself that it was just a confusion, that my mind was playing a cruel joke on me. However, every time we coincided at a family gathering or when our hands accidentally brushed, a different warmth would run through my body. Our relationship began with furtive glances, with silences that said more than words. Eduardo was a serious man, one of those who seemed to be in control of everything around him, but when we were alone, his face relaxed, and there was something in his gaze that I desperately needed to understand. One night, during a meeting at my in-laws' house, I got up to get something to drink. I felt his gaze following me, but I didn't dare turn around. When I entered the kitchen, I felt his presence behind me. Wait, we know you are liking the video. Leave us a like and subscribe to the best Rainbow Fantasy Stories channel. Let's keep going. I need to talk to you, he said in a low, gravelly voice, but with a tinge of urgency I had never heard from him before. I turned slowly, meeting his eyes fixed on mine. I felt his breathing close, his body too close to mine. I said nothing, because at that moment words were unnecessary. His hand brushed mine with a slight tremor. "We can't do this," I whispered, although my body was already leaning towards him. "I know," he replied, but he did not move away. At that instant, the kitchen door opened and my wife came in smiling, asking what we were doing there. Eduardo immediately turned away and I pretended to be looking for something in the fridge. That was the beginning of everything. From then on, every encounter was filled with tension, hidden friction, prolonged glances that no one else noticed. It wasn't until weeks later, at a family dinner, that it all boiled over. I excused myself to go outside to get some air, and soon after I felt Eduardo's presence beside me. "This is crazy," I said, not daring to look at him. "I know," he replied, and then his hand rested on mine. I don't know which of us took the first step, but when I realized, his lips were on mine. It was a brief but intense kiss, charged with years of repression. We broke apart suddenly, breathing heavily. "We can't do this," I muttered, my lips still burning. "But we want to do it," he said, and there was no doubt in his eyes. From that moment on, everything changed. We met in secret, in hotel rooms outside the city, in places where no one would recognize us. Eduardo was fire and calm at the same time. When he touched me, he did it with the urgency of someone who has been waiting for something inevitable for years, but when he embraced me afterwards, his warmth enveloped me in a feeling of absolute peace. The lies began to pile up. I would tell my wife that I had work meetings, that projects at the office required more time. Eduardo did the same with his family. But every time we were together, the weight of guilt grew heavier. One afternoon, while he was getting dressed after one of our meetings, I looked at him carefully. "How will it end?" I asked. Eduardo remained silent, slowly fastening the buttons of his shirt. "I don't know," he said at last. "But I don't want to lose you. I didn't want to lose him either, but I knew that time was not on our side. It was getting harder and harder to hide it, more and more risky. The possibility of being discovered became more real with each lie. Don't forget to subscribe and like us for more content like this. It helps us grow this community. Let's continue." One day, as I was returning home, I found my wife sitting in the living room with the phone in her hand. "Where were you?" he asked, his voice without a trace of its usual sweetness. I felt a shiver run through me. "At work," I replied, but she didn't look away from me. "Why did my dad call me asking for you?" The air seemed to disappear from my lungs. Maybe he got confused, I said, trying to stay calm. She watched me for a few more seconds before nodding slowly. Yes, maybe. After that, everything changed. Eduardo and I began to see less of each other, fearful that suspicion would grow. However, the desire was still there, latent, smoldering beneath the surface. The day everything exploded, I didn't see it coming. My wife waited up for me, with the phone in her hand and an expression that chilled my blood. "Do you want to tell me what you were doing in a hotel with my father?" My throat closed. There was no excuse that could save me, no lie that could erase what I already knew. The discussion was long, full of shouting and reproaches. I had never seen so much pain in his eyes. The next day, I received a message from Eduardo. "We need to talk." We met in a secluded park. He looked tired, more tired than I had ever seen him. "He knows everything," I said bluntly. Eduardo sighed, running a hand over his face. "I thought so," he replied in a strained voice. "My wife did too." We were silent. For the first time in a long time, we didn't know what to do. "Is this the end?" I asked, feeling a lump in my throat. Eduardo looked at me sadly. Maybe we always knew. I clung to him in one last embrace, feeling his body against mine, etching his scent in my memory. I knew that was the last one. We parted without further words. I went home, gathered my things, and left. My marriage was over, but my love for Eduardo was not. Months passed and we never spoke again. I knew he went on with his life, just like me, but every time I passed in front of the hotel where we used to meet, I felt his ghost by my side, reminding me that there was a time when we loved each other beyond what was allowed. Months passed, and the weight of the past continued to haunt me in every silence. My ex-wife stopped looking for me shortly after I left, and although at first I felt relief, over time the absence became a painful reminder of all that I had lost. I didn't just lose a marriage. I lost a family, a routine, a home, and most of all, I lost him. Hey, before we continue, we invite you to give us a like and subscribe to our Rainbow Fantasy channel. Also, let us know if you want to listen to a particular story. Let's continue. I was convinced that Eduardo had decided to move on. I told myself it was for the best, that any attempt to rebuild us would be a mistake. But then, one random night, my phone rang. It was an unknown number, but my heart knew who it was before I even answered. "Are you still there?" asked his voice on the other end of the line. The air got stuck in my throat. I didn't need to say his name. "Always," I answered. The silence that followed was loaded with everything we hadn't said to each other in months. "See you at our place," he whispered, then hung up. My body moved before I could stop it. I didn't think about the consequences or what might happen next. I just knew I needed it. When I arrived at the hotel, I found him waiting for me in the same room where we had taken refuge so many times. His look was different, as if life had slipped away from him a little since the last time we had seen each other. "I missed you," he murmured before hugging me tightly. We kissed as if time had never passed, as if we had never been discovered, as if we were still those men trapped in an impossible secret. But reality caught up with us. "We can't go on like this," I whispered against his lips. Eduardo nodded, but did not turn away. "Then tell me how we can go on, because walking away from you is not an option." And in that instant, I knew our love would never end. We hope you liked the video. Let us know if you liked this story. Also, leave us a like and share it with your friends so they don't miss it.